I'm Jo Podelko from the Central Scotland School of Jewellery, and we're here to help you on your jewellery journey. Today let's talk about sawing. Saw piercing is one of the main skills in jewellery making, and it's one of the first things we teach our students here at the school. What you'll need is a saw frame. You'll need a bench peg. Now there's obviously a lot of different styles of bench peg. If you happen to have one that has a sloped side and a flat side, you're going to want to use the flat side for sawing. And you need saw blades. Now saw blades come in loads of different sizes, from really, really teeny to quite rough. If you're starting out, choose a 2/0. That's a nice general saw blade that'll be good for most jobs. We need to load the saw blade into your saw frame, and this can be a little tricky for some folk because the teeth of the saw blade are really tiny. They're quite difficult to see, and they need to go into the saw frame using a particular orientation. The teeth need to be pointing down the way, and they need to be pointing out from the saw frame, down and out. If you have trouble seeing these tiny teeth, what you could do is use a magnifier, or sometimes I just use a sheet of white paper and I hold the teeth against the white paper, and that helps me determine what's top and what's bottom and which way they're pointing. So I've got my orientation correct, and I'm going to load it into my saw frame. I always put the top in first, but it's not important. So it's got a little wing nut that you need to open, and then you have 2 plates with a gap, and we're sliding the saw blade into the gap and tightening the wing nut. However, the second part is a little bit more complex. The second one has to go in under tension. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to lean on my saw frame. I'm going to put it on the table, and I'm going to compress this shape. This shape is getting smaller. And while I'm leaning on it, use all your body weight. I'm going to tuck my second piece, the bottom half of the saw blade, in between those 2 plates, and I'm going to tighten this wing nut. When you're finished, your saw blade, you should be able to pluck it, and you should be able to hear a ting. Now the opposite of a ting is a twang, and we don't want a twang. I'll show you what that sounds like. That's a twang, that's too loose. All you need to do is turn it upside down again, put a little bit of downwards pressure, and make sure that this saw blade is going in under tension. There we go. Thinking about sawing, we need something to saw. We need maybe a pattern we're planning on sawing out, or a design, and there's different ways to do this too. Today we're going to work in copper. Copper is quite cheap and affordable, and but it works very much in the same way that silver does. It has a lot of similar properties. So if you're starting out, copper is a great place to start. And what I've chosen to do is just print a picture off the internet of a little heart, and I'm going to glue that down. You can just Pritt stick it to the metal. Use a lot of glue. You don't want it to lift up halfway through cutting it. I know some people that prefer double-sided tape. I quite like Pritt stick because it's easy to get it off after I'm finished. And I'm going to pop the picture in one corner of my metal. There's no point in sticking it in the middle, because then I'll just have to saw all the way to it and give myself extra work. So I'm going to pop that down there, and we'll give it a couple seconds to dry. While it's drying, we can talk a little bit about your posture while you're sawing. Your bench peg should be roughly breastbone height, and this is to make sure that you're not straining your neck and your back while you're looking down and saw piercing. Your bench peg is here really just to support your work, so it doesn't matter if you saw a little bit into it or nick a little bit off of it. It should have a V-shaped cutout. If yours comes without a cutout, you can just use a wood saw to create that V shape, and that's to allow your saw access so you can pierce out your design. Sawing in jewelry it should have a really light touch. You should even be able to hold your jewelry saw with just a couple of fingers. You don't need to grip it tightly, and you don't need a lot of tension. When you get started, you can start at a 45-degree angle and just draw down gently. You'll need quite strong hands on your holding hand. I'm right-handed, so I've got the saw in my right hand and I'm holding with my left hand. It's actually your holding hand that's going to end up being a lot more tired than your sawing hand. So start at a 45-degree angle, draw back, but almost immediately what you need to do is to start moving your saw so it's traveling straight up and down. And there's not a lot of pressure involved. It's a very gentle, graceful motion. If you could compare it to anything, I would compare it to maybe a sewing machine needle. The needle travels up and down, but it doesn't drive forwards, and that should be how you're aiming to operate your saw. If you start driving forwards too much, it sounds different. It sounds like this. And it's really hard to keep control of where you're going with your saw blade. So keep it gentle, keep it light. At the start, some people find a little bit of beeswax helpful. This can lubricate your blade. If you draw it up and down the blade once or twice, it provides a little bit of lubrication. You might break a lot of blades. That is just a fact of life when you start sawing. You might even break an entire pack, and they come in a pack of 12. So as I saw, a little bit of dust is generated. I'm just going to blow that away so I can see my pattern. I'm not wearing a dust mask when I'm sawing because metal dust is heavy. It tends to fall to the ground. Definitely if I was sawing plastic or wood, I would want a dust mask. When you need to start to turn, it's important that you start to turn your piece rather than always turning your sawing hand. Because if you need to turn a really sharp corner, you're going to run out of arm eventually. So I'm actually turning the piece of metal that I'm working on very slowly, very gently as I'm sawing. And I'm not taking away any metal. I'm literally just going up and down and slowly turning the metal until my orientation is correct for me to begin sawing forwards again. And you'll see my saw blade is still nice and straight up and down. When you get close to your corner, slow down your saw, and as you reach the kind of point where you want to turn, have your saw going up and down, but try not to go forward at all while you turn your metal. So literally you're just sawing on the spot, not forward, not backward, just up and down and fractionally turning your metal. Keep doing this until you've got your design back in the right direction for sawing, and then you can simply start again. Now I'm going to try and deliberately break my saw blade here so you can see what needs to happen if you accidentally break your blade. So I'll turn a really sharp corner. There we go, one broken blade. I've broken it quite spectacularly. So all you need to do, loosen the top wing nut, get rid of that. Loosen the bottom wing nut, get rid of that. We recycle our saw blades. And select yourself a fresh blade. Okay, so you've got a couple of options. You could start in your original saw cut line and you could wiggle that saw frame all the way through until you get to the point at which your blade has broken. Or your second option is perhaps maybe you could come in from a new angle if that's a little bit closer. In this case, I'm quite near the top of my heart. It's going to be a lot less work if I just simply come in from the top and join up with the existing line. So once again, because I'm starting a new line, I can start in a 45-degree angle, but immediately I'm going to drop my hand so that my saw blade is straight up and down 90 degrees. I'm going to relax and off I go. I hope you picked up some helpful tips for your sawing. I'm going to send you to your benches to get started.